Hi, it's Paul Antonelli here. Welcome to another episode of the Ideal Business Podcast. I'm currently recording this from a location called Coward Springs. Been doing a few recordings here, which is on the Oodendata track in the South Australian state, in the outback of South Australia. So what am I going to talk about today? Today I want to talk about, obviously this podcast is all about helping you create, shape, transform your business into an ideal business for you, and how to go about that. One of the criteria is adaptability. Adaptability, and the definition of adaptability is it's the quality of being able to adjust to new conditions. Look, if you've been in business before, you'd know that new conditions are a natural part of being in business. Things are changing all the time in business. What sort of, I want to give you a bit of an example of, a really good example of adaptability in the Australian outback. A few days ago, we stopped at a place called Adaptability, which is a small town. It produces close to, I think it's about 70 to 80% of the world's opals. It's a small town located in the outback. Very, very hot summers. So it's in the deserts, very hot summer. So during summers, the summer periods can be 4 or 5 months long. Temperatures can be typically 45 to 50 degrees Celsius every day. Really hot place. And in this location, there's a lot of where they've done, there's mounds all over the place, and what they've been doing as they've been mining for opals, there's these dugouts, and then people actually have built their homes. A lot of the homes in Adaptability are actually underground in these mounds, and they call them dugouts because the rock is designed for it. So you can have big spans, big ceiling spans, and the homes are obviously very cool because they've got earth all around them, just a small area that you typically walk into. This is a really good example of how being able to adapt to the conditions for a better outcome. So it reduces, obviously, cooling costs. It's a unique place. It's one of the rare places which has a lot of residences like this underground in Australia. But it just really made me sort of highlight and rethink the idea of adaptability and why that's important to adapt to what takes place. And obviously this is an environment where living underground has its distinct advantages. So when you look at adaptability for a business, what does that actually mean? Well, there's forces. I always frame it up in a way, if you consider it, that there's two type of things that can, typically in all businesses, there's things that you can have influence over or in your realm of accountability or responsibility. And there's those that you have no control over whatsoever. And so, these forces you have influence over, you can influence a lot of things within your own business. You can decide on your turnover, you can decide on where you operate, you can decide if you want to scale effectively or you're interested in not scaling but going deeper. You can how you build your business. There's so many different things that you have influence over. And you are able then to use these sorts of, this type of criteria is stuff that you can use to adapt depending on what's happening, where you're going to be based. And if you think about a business, it's constantly adapting. When you start a business in the first few years, there's a lot of new things going on, there's a lot of chaos going on, there's new people coming on board, there's a lot of testing. And then over a period of time, once you start getting in the second 5 years, typically it starts stabilising out, and you need to change. The business needs to evolve a little bit. Potentially, the team that got the business to where it was in the first 5 years is not necessarily the right team to move it to the next level. And so, and you can be, and that's important to be aware of that. It was something that I took a little bit of time for me to understand, was that I needed to constantly be looking at whether my team was the right team to move the business through the various stages of growth and evolution. And so you can get stuck in you can sort of get stuck. The business can get stuck, and one of the reasons it can get stuck is because potentially, it might not have the expertise and the experience that you need to move the business. And it's a tough lesson to learn if that's happening within your business. And often when you start a new business, there's lots of innovation going on, there's a lot of change, a lot of excitement, which is great. And there's a lot of, you're kicking a lot of goals and a lot of milestones. But eventually this sort of pioneering approach won't serve you as well if you don't start stabilizing and it starts sort of evolving a little bit. And so it's a big thing to consider. When I look at adaptability, it's probably one of the core areas that you need to consider adapting. If you're finding that your business is a little bit sort of stuck, have a look at your team, look closely at your team, and not saying these are good team members or bad team members, because they could be great team members that have been with you, but do you have the right skill and knowledge set and expertise on board to move the business through into the next level? It's a key consideration. And this needs, and as you do that, you bring that experience in, it can be a bit of a game changer for your business. And so there are things that, and these are the areas that you have influence over. You just need to understand that to be able to adapt is almost a requirement in business in order to grow and expand. Then in business, you've got the other parts of other forces that are really outside of your control. These are things that, if you've been in business before, you just have to expect that these things take place. At the recording of this podcast, we're sort of still in the midst of a bit of a pandemic. This has been devastating. It has a huge impact on many businesses and lives and continues to do so globally. It's huge, and there's been businesses that have had to adapt and had to evolve in order to really survive during these times. There's also been an opportunity to not just survive, but to thrive, So you've seen a lot of places, a lot of businesses actually do really, really well during this period. But then there's always been other activity. There's stock market crashes. We had the global financial crisis. We can have major weather events. There can be, terrorist attacks, 9/11, for example. And so you have no control over these, absolutely zero control. And the only thing that you can be certain about is that these type of events continually occur. And it's it's sort of a bit of a head in sand approach to business if you think, well, they're not going to happen. So they do happen. They always happen. I've been in business for almost 3 decades. They always happen. They always come up. They're always unexpected. And they always can create a lot of chaos. And so it's these type of events that you need to be able to, within your business, adapt. And you don't really know what that is. So you can't specifically create a plan for a particular event because you don't know what it is, but you may need to have a process or make sure that your business is able to adapt very, very quickly. So things like market changes, regulation, competition, legislation, weather events, these are all things that fall into that. You have no control over it. So how do you improve the adaptability of your business? If one of an ideal business criteria to have a business that's highly adaptable, how do you do that? What are some of the things to consider so that you can have a business that is in fact highly adaptable and able to deal with these external forces much more effectively? Just going to go through some of the key ones. First one is time. Often the biggest issue when these events take place is you need to have time to be able to adapt or to be able to pivot or to be able to change direction and not having that time can be can bring a business to an end, if that makes sense. And so to having that time to be able to adapt means that you firstly have to know that there is an issue. And so that's really important, to be aware that there is an issue, something's not trending right, because sometimes these events aren't all of a sudden, they're just things that are taking place slowly slow by slow, there's a change taking place. And so being aware of an issue will give you, the earliest you're aware of an issue, the more time you've got to adapt and evolve and to understand what's going on there. So it's a little bit like the tsunami. You know, this is a really good example of almost the inevitable. You know, we know with tsunamis that if there's an earthquake in one location, you know, over a period of time, it might be within the next day, within 10 hours, 12 hours, you know, there can be the opportunity for a tsunami that takes place and might hit something, you know, 5,000 miles away, 5,000 kilometres away. And so having a warning system, so now what they've developed is these warning systems to let people know in potential locations that something's coming. So it's not the fact that there's a tsunami that could come, it's having enough time so that sort of warning system can save a lot of lives if it's put into place. So a really good warning system to have in a business is statistics and a dashboard, yeah. And I talk a lot about that in another podcast. So having stats and a dashboard, and you're tracking these numbers on a weekly basis, is a really good warning system. So it enables you to see what's going on, understand if there's something that's starting to go astray, and finding that out early enough. And that's why we track our statistics on a weekly basis. It's really important because then you've got the ability to see something happening and adapt and change quickly. The second thing to be able to adapt is cash, or having cash reserves. And cash reserves are, without cash, you know, you basically can run out of cash, or you need cash to adapt or to implement changes or to do things. And so having cash reserves for these type of events and having a way of setting money aside so that you can deal with these effectively is really important. I talk about financial stability, and that's a framework that I've already discussed in another podcast. Go back and have a look at that. And so more cash equates to more adaptability. And they link into time. So having a good warning system, dashboard statistics, and having sufficient cash reserves will enable you to be more adaptive. Second thing to consider is physicality. So obviously we live in a world today where, you know, we operate our businesses with no real physicality. We don't have offices, we don't have furniture, all our staff work from home, we're paperless, all those sorts of things. And that introduces more flexibility, and less physicality equates to more adaptability. And so that means that you're able to adapt, you know, you're not so location bound. You can look at if you need expertise or teams. So the ability to operate in different locations if you don't have physicality. You know, whilst we provide services to clients, physical services to clients, we still can operate the business with low physicality. And so some of the tools to consider are being paperless and cloud-based as a business. So you don't have a place where things need to be kept. Don't need actually a physical office or equipment, you know, particularly if it's non-operational. And you can have, you know, that gives you more adaptability. And so these are some of the examples of being able to adapt, the less physicality. And that's one of the concepts behind InvisBiz, is to have less physicality, because it introduces the ability to be more adaptable in your business. The other thing to consider is a bit of a culture in your business that change is normal. We're always changing. It's something that takes place. Often businesses become very complacent, and then, you know, longer businesses have been around, say 10 years plus, they can become very, you know, this is the way we've always done things, not open to innovation, not open to change. And this rigid structure or this rigid thinking as part of the culture can actually make it very difficult to adapt when you need to. You know, one of the things, I remember talking to a good friend of mine who runs a large real estate business. He's trying to evolve the business, and been around for, you know, I think it was about 15 years at that time. He wanted to make changes. One of the biggest changes he had was trying to bring those changes into play within the business, because there'd been people that had been there a long time, a lot of loyalty. It was really hard to make changes within the business because of the lack of thinking relating to change, innovation, adaptation. And this can become a real source of frustration in a business. So if you can create a culture where everyone understands that change is normal, it's always taking place, we need to be able to adapt, and having these discussions with your team members so that change is normal as opposed to change is abnormal, then it can make a big difference. And you can do this through keeping everyone up to date with information, sharing details. I've talked about executive meeting formats that you can run. And then also when something's not going well in the business, sharing it with the team and getting them on board to resolve some of these key issues and making improvements to the business. So that's another, that concept that change is normal as part of a culture can make a massive difference. The other thing that provides the ability to adapt is having the right structure and procedures in place so that you can move faster with less chaos. So an example is if, let's say, you might need to adapt and roll out a new service, if you've got a clear process and a procedure for doing this, how to roll out a new service, for example, or how to launch a new product, it's going to be a lot more cleaner, isn't it? You're going to go, all right, let's put this checklist into place. If you're going to roll out a new marketing campaign, you've got a clear process and policy and procedure how that happens. You've got a followed structure that you can use. So having procedures and processes for rolling things out and implementing whatever it may be, marketing campaigns, new services, expanding into a new location, will enable you to adapt quicker because you don't have to work out what do we do, what are the steps, what are the processes, what if we get it wrong. So procedures and processes are another key tool to consider. Okay, so look, hopefully that highlights the importance of having an adaptable business. The more adaptable I think a business is, the more able it is to withstand any external forces or even internal issues that take place. And just recapping, what can make a business more adaptable is having more time, having less physicality, having a culture and a belief that change is normal, and having good processes and procedures within your business. Okay, thanks for listening. Look forward to catching up with you in our next podcast. Until then, ciao for now.